So as Dr. Kang introduced, today's presentation is about researching North Korea in Washington. Um, Let me start with the discussion about Korea in DC. Washington tends to be more interested in North Korea than South Korea, believe it or not. Because as you know, Washington is a city of diplomacy and national security. And the whole world is watching Washington for their national security issues from each country's perspective. So, and we have Congress and White House and the federal governments in Washington. And it's a kind of a small city, but very internationalized. And uh, in Washington, from its perspective, North Korea uh, attracts more attention because of its national security implications. However, South Korea itself attracted a lot of attention in the past couple of times. First, um, I think the 1997 financial crisis or IMF crisis, if you're familiar with the terms used by the South Korean people, at the time, uh, rather than national security, the financial crisis that swept at least the Asian part of the world was really, critical issues for the Washington people. And Chorus FTA, that was a kind of a breakthrough uh, in the economic relationship between the U.S. and Korea, and we still have lingering effect and trying to move forward from the free trade agreements that was made between the two allies. So that was really big issue. And when we have presidential elections or general elections in South Korea, obviously that will impact the diplomacy or national security issues or U.S.-Korea relations, or even U.S. North Korea relations and security landscapes in Northeast Asia even. So that's another big issue that Washington pay attention to when it comes to the things going on in South Korea. But again, mostly Washington is focused on this relationship with North Korea or what's going on in North Korea. And Trump, President Trump, he made a really big change in terms of the recognition, people's recognition of North Korea. Not only the policy circle people, but the general people in the street in the US, they started to at least understand where North Korea is. And, they got a lot of news reports about their president's efforts to improve a relationship with North Korea. So Trump's North Korea policy, whether it was welcomed or not, whether however you interpret his or assess his policy, his presidency made a huge impact on American people's recognition of North Korea and the issues surrounding the Korean Peninsula. And BTS, it's not a joke at all. BTS made really big change in America, I guess throughout the whole world. And especially the students at my university, GW also, a lot of people said they started to, get interested in Korea, especially South Korea, because they loved the BTS and the songs they sang. And from there, uh, some people, especially this, college students, they started to be interested in um, the Korean Peninsula, the geopolitics surrounding the peninsula. So uh, whether DC, Washington is mostly interested in North Korea, yes and no, I should say now. And especially in Washington, there is a deep-rooted North Korea fatigue, which I will discuss further later on. Basically, they don't see clear path to a negotiated solutions to the North Korean nuclear problem. It has been like for at least a couple of decades, like 3 decades, and still we're back to the starting point, and still discussing whether we should negotiate with North Korea. So that's so frustrating. And as you know, because of the COVID-19, North Korea, they safe quarantined and tried to shut down themselves from outside world, even with China. That made also the North Korea watchers in Washington very frustrated, even though South Korea, the United States tried to reach out to North Korea to at least have an ice breaking, but it didn't work out. And as you know, because of the US-China strategic rivalry, economic security rather than national security is emerging as the most important, uh, or at least one of the most important topics in Washington, and the relationship between the US and South Korea. So these new trends or events made North Korea a little bit less attractive, if you will, to the North Korea researchers, and they're shifting to the areas of economic security, or focusing on South Korea itself. I think that that's kind of the new developments that I can observe in Washington. Researching in Washington, as I indicated at the beginning, it's mostly about policy papers rather than academic papers, because the authors, or the North Korea researchers, watchers, they're targeting a non-academic audience, basically. So government officials, opinion leaders in Washington, but also um, the people throughout the world are watching what's going on in Washington carefully, and the media also. That also includes, American and South Korean and other countries' media. So their main target is these readers. So that makes the research outcome a little bit different from the academic papers that we can usually read in the academia. And by definition, policy papers that they have to be relevant to current issues. So timing is very critical. You can discuss history, what happened decades ago, but if you stop there, then it's not relevant to the Washington readers or the main targets. So you have to tackle the current issues, and the timing is really critical. For example, if you have a summit meeting between the US and South Korea, your research papers, or even op-ed contributed to newspapers, it has to come out, within like a couple of weeks after the summit. If not, people will be losing any taste to read your papers. And the critical sources or information usually are not openly available because there's something going on, mostly under the surface. So it's really hard to gather the information from the open sources like media reports or the government announcements. So the authors, they have to have some kind of a journalistic mind. You don't just surf the web to get the information, but you need to meet the people. Meeting the people is really important part of their job or daily work. Because without this human touch, you don't really get the context or most updated information. And without that, your paper may sound really boring or not that informative enough, which is really undermining, the outcome of your research. So journalistic mind is really important for this kind of, research. And obviously, they focus on prescriptive questions. They want to diagnose the current situation and try to provide solutions or at least their own predictions. Many times they turn out to be wrong. For example, collapse of the North Korean regime. So many people proved to be wrong, and like COVID-19, many people suspected that because of this pandemic, North Korea would go through a huge hardships, and they will, undermine the foundation of the regime stability. But so far, North Korea seems to be muddling through as before. So many times, your solutions may not be picked up by the government officials, or your predictions turn out to be wrong, but you have to move forward, like the people working in the stock market, right? You have to leave behind what happened in the past and keep moving forward, and keep kind of a forward-looking attitude. And you have very busy audience who usually don't have time to read thick books. So the research outcome tends to be shorter than the academic papers that you can usually get from the academic scholars. Of course, we have North Korea scholars in Washington in the academia. So I'm proud to introduce Professor Yonho Kim at GW, one of my great colleagues here. He wrote many books about North Korea, Rewriting Revolution, Women, Sexuality, and Memory in North Korean Fiction. So obviously he's an expert on the North Korean literature and culture. His another book, Laughing North Koreans, is another great book that I want to recommend to you. And friend, this is translation of a North Korean novel, and it became one of New York Times bestsellers in 2020. And the B.G. Moon, another example of great, scholars on North Korea in Washington. He's a visual artist and professor of painting at Georgetown. And his book on North Korean art, The Enigmatic World of Chosunhwa, is a great work of him. And I understand he's going to make a presentation at NCNK in the coming days. And Victor Cha at Georgetown, he wrote a book, The Impossible State, North Korea Past and Future. Andrew Young at Catholic University, another great scholar who wrote States, Society, and Markets in North Korea, another important topic about North Korea. But as you know, Victor Cha is Korea Chair at CSIS, and Andrew Young, Korea Chair at Brookings Institution. So they're more, famous for their, policy papers. And Emmanuel Kim and BJ Moon, most of the policy people in Washington, I guess they're not familiar with their books. So uh, I should say this is kind of exceptional cases in Washington. North Korea research um, in Washington, I think you have to look into that in the context of a U.S.-ROC relationship. Um, obviously, Washington views North Korea in the context of diplomacy and national security. And the U.S.-ROC relations, their decades-old alliance with South Korea is, critical, point in their consideration of this, issue. And North Korea policy, it shifts between liberal and conservative governments, both in Seoul and Washington. So depending on which kind of government you have in Seoul and Washington, the main topics tend to shift. So you have to watch closely on the policy agenda that the governments in Seoul and Washington have in mind. And obviously, funding and demand for North Korea research comes many times from South Korea. You do have many foundations in America that support the research on North Korea also, but it is very obvious that you have many events and projects going on that are funded by the South Korean side. So let me just discuss the evolution of North Korea research in Washington from the period of Kim Dae-jung to present. We can go further back, but since I came to Washington in 1998, when the KDJ government was launched, I should say I should start with KDJ so that I can share with you what I observed in Washington. So Kim Dae-jung, when he took the office, obviously South Korea was in great transition in terms of domestic politics, a financial crisis, and North-South relationship. Domestic politics, obviously, the first time was the first time that South Korea saw regime change from conservative to liberal. So it's one of the important topics that Washington people should focus on. And financial crisis, it has huge impact on the U.S.-Korea relationship and huge implications to even security relationship. And North-South relationship, KDJ's sunshine policy dramatically changed the whole landscape. So Mount Kumgang in 1998, North-South Summit, the first summit between the two Koreas in 2000, and Kaesong Industrial Complex. These whole new dramas or developments produced new voices in DC. And they tried to help the people in Washington understand why these dramatic changes are happening, and what are the implications to the U.S. National security. And one interesting topic I observed was sunshine policy's political economy. Sunshine policy is not just a North-South relationship or military or political relationship, but if you remember the whole situation the South Korea was facing in 1998, the financial crisis was lingering. I remember, when I came to Washington in December of 1998, the exchange rate was like 1,600 won per dollar. It's currently around 1,300 won, and people are complaining. The South Korean people are complaining that it's too high. But if you compare the exchange rates at the time, South Korea is going through a relatively manageable situation. But again, if you have a very turbulent North-South relationship, the financial market in South Korea at the time would have reacted accordingly, and for example, the exchange rates would become uncontrollable. But thanks to sunshine policy, the financial market, in a way, could be, calmed down gradually. That's one point that some people in Washington tried to make at the time, I remember. And Bush's ABC, anything but Clinton, that's another big shock to this whole, picture after Kim Dae-jung took office. So before Bush, President Clinton was pretty much cooperative with Kim Dae-jung, his sunshine policy and other, diplomatic efforts. But after Bush took the office, people were saying he just moved the goalpost, meaning up until the end of the Clinton's term, the U.S. and North Korea were coming closer to each other to make a diplomatic breakthrough. And Clinton even considered visiting Pyongyang. But Bush, he just moved the goalpost and just tried to pursue the ABC, anything but Clinton policy. So in Washington, at the time, we could see a big clash between pro-engagement people and hawks in dealing with North Korea. And that's another big topic at the time. And naval clashes near NLL, Northern Limit Line, the West Sea of the Korean Peninsula in 1998 and 2002. People were scratching their head. What's going on in North Korea? How can we understand North Korea's behavior pattern? I mean, even under the sunshine policy, we have this military conflicts between the two Koreas. How do we understand this? So that's a big challenge and a big discussion at the time. Roh Moo-hyun, during his term, a lot of dramatic events happened, and obviously that was the focus of the North Korea research in Washington. Axis of Evil address by Bush, and HEU controversy when that happened after Assistant Secretary James Kelly visited Pyongyang. And after that, the agreed framework started to collapse. That all happened in 2002. And the six-party talks replaced the bilateral negotiations between the U.S. and North Korea, which started in 2003. And CVID, that was the Bush administration's basic attitude, approach. And we have North Korea's first nuclear test in 2006. So many dramatic changes going on. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this new form of multilateral negotiations with North Korea? That's a big topic at the time. And Kaesong Industrial Complex, it was initiated by Kim Dae-jung, but officially launched in 2004. And at the time, the biggest issue was whether the goods produced in Kaesong Industrial Complex can be exempted from the high import tax in U.S. Obviously, South Korea wanted that happen, but U.S. was not that willing. And the cash flow to North Korea regime, that question emerged, especially when it comes to Mount Kumgang project. It's basically providing cash to North Korea. Is that strategically a good move? Are we supporting the regime? That questions emerged. And BDA sanctions. So that announcement by Treasury was made right before the September 19 joint statement in 2005. So State Department, obviously, they didn't coordinate it with Treasury. And many people asked whether there's some kind of tug of war between Treasury and State Department. That's a big question they had in mind. And they realized how powerful the financial sanctions are in dealing with North Korea. And the joint statement in 2005, North Korea pledged to abandon all nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs. So from there, the whole concept of step by step and action for action was completed, I think. And no matter how and no matter what you negotiate with North Korea, you will end up with sticking to this concept of step by step and action for action. And at the time, U.S. midterm elections in 2006, the Bush administration, the Republicans expected that they would lose the House side, but keep the Senate. But it turned out they lost both houses of Congress. So after that, President Bush asked Assistant Secretary Hill to make, to accelerate the negotiations with North Korea. And Hill was really a great, negotiator. And North Korea ended up with exploding their cooling tower at Yongbyon nuclear complex. And in return, the U.S. removed North Korea from the terrorism list. And so that's another big topic at the time. So many topics, exciting topics they had to deal with, which include this terrorism list. And people realized that's not the only unilateral sanctions that U.S. imposed on North Korea. So many complicated, list of sanctions. So it's a kind of long way to go if you want to completely remove unilateral sanctions on North Korea by the U.S. Lee Myung-bak, he suggested Vision 3000 through denuclearization and openness, but right after that, we had a shooting death of tourist, Mount Kumgang tourist, Park Kwang-ja, like South Korean citizen, in 2008. So everything just stopped between the South Korea and North Korea, except for Kaesong Industrial Complex. and the second nuclear test by North Korea in 2009. Although we had President Obama, who is a Democrat, and a lot of people expected that he should be, really different from Bush in terms of his approach to the North Korean problem. But it was not, mostly because of this, unfortunate events. And so what I observed was debates on North Korea policy in Washington uh, were hardly seen. During the Bush administration, again, there was a huge clash between the pro-engagement and hawks. But hawks were really satisfied the way President Obama approached the North Korea issue. And Democrats or pro-engagement people, they stopped short of criticizing their Democratic president, I should say. So in that kind of environment, you don't really see great debates here. And we had Cheonan, sinking of Cheonan and shelling of Yeonpyeong Island in 2010, and Kim Jong-il's death in 2011. So the most important topic at the time was contingency plan, how we're going to deal with the situation where North Korea suddenly collapsed. And in that situation, we have to deal with the nuclear weapons in North Korea. Who's going to secure them? Who's going to take them out and keep them? And the humanitarian crisis obviously will happen. And what kind of role you would expect from China and Japan? And what about environmental degradation and public health issues coming from North Korea? There was a huge topic at the time, and but the U.S. Because the Obama was seeking re-election in the coming presidential election, they tried to have make a deal with North Korea so that they won't have another unfortunate incident like a sinking of Cheonan or a Yeonpyeong shelling. So they finally made a deal with North Korea, so-called Leap Day deal in 2012, and that shows how U.S. domestic politics and North Korea policy are intertwined. Another example of this this aspect. I think we can discuss this later if you're interested. Park Geun-hye, her policy, North Korea policy, was trust politic, step-by-step trust building process with North Korea. So basically resuming humanitarian assistance and discussing initial economic development proposals with tangible progress to denuclearize and in North Korea and pursue introduce economic reforms in North Korea. The Park Geun-hye administration stressed that this is not a conciliation policy, but based on strong deterrence. But at the time, many people asked, what's the difference from Lee Myung-bak, his North Korea policy? And many people pointed out that they could see a greater continuity than change from Lee Myung-bak. And then we had a unification bonanza in 2014. So it's basically pursuing unprecedented prosperity resulting from unification with North Korea. So let's forget about the complicated and seemingly not reachable in the near future, uh, you know, the unification process. But let's say it is we are unified, then what would happen? You can have business opportunities from a combination of South Korean capital and technology with North Korean labor and natural resources. So perfect, labor division of labor you can expect. And at the time, this unification bonanza was built on a presidential agenda of creative economy, 창조 경제. And this also raised public awareness of the value of unification, 통일교육, especially after the inter-Korean relations were soured. 통일교육 was more, emphasized by the government. But the Washington's skepticism was this: what do we know about North Korea's labor, natural resources, and industries? For example, I've been researching North Korea's mobile telecom industry. The basic data, basic information about their mobile telecom industry is not available. How many cell phone subscribers do we have in North Korea? Around 6 million, but it's estimated number. North Korea never announced or made the information publicly available. The Egyptian company that is, a business with the joint venture with North Korea, they stopped, releasing the number since like 2013. So without that basic information, how can we, how can we explain or even predict how the division of labor between the two Koreas will work? That's a big question. And then another question is whether North Korea is interested in inter-Korean economic cooperation. They may not be satisfied with the role that was offered by South Korea. Maybe instead of getting like a 3G or upgraded 3G or 4G, mobile telecom technologies, they would ask for 5G, technologies or technical support from South Korea. Will that be politically, doable? That's a big question, right? And what if the unification process turns out violent? In the unification bonanza, you just try not to discuss this process, but what if it's going to be violent? Then the U.S. immediate interest will be securing nukes. That's another big question, and you can spend whole year discussing this one single topic. And based on the U.S. Experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, this is a really practical and realistic issue when you're talking about unification process on the Korean Peninsula. So that's that issue attracted more attention in Washington at the time, I think. And South Korea's nuclear armament, after North Korea's fourth nuclear test, and the Kaesong Industrial Complex shut down in 2016. Then ruling parties, leading politicians supported the idea of reintroducing US tactical nukes. If that's not doable, then South Korea should go nuclear. And that produces huge controversies, political controversies, both in Washington and Seoul. And many people in Washington asked if the conservatives in South Korea doubt the US military commitment to the alliance. That's really unexpected development from their point of view. And public opinion poll shows that increasing number of people in South Korea uh, are supporting the idea of South Korea's going nuclear, but you need to look into the questionnaire very careful. So depending on how you ask the question, which questions you ask, and how you gather the responses, you could have a totally different results. So that's something you have to be careful about. And strategic patience, that's another big topic, or people jokingly said strategic ignorance. Basically, dual track policy on North Korea, keeping engagement open for North Korea's good behavior while seeking to impose sanctions for bad behavior. Again, during the Obama administration, pro-engagement people try not to openly criticize this approach, but when they were getting closer to the end of Obama administration, they raised belated criticism. So basically, strategic patience was not a strategy or policy, but wishful thinking. And this policy or wishful thinking tends to support the status quo rather than encourage change. So how can you say this is kind of policy? This was their big question, and they tried to spark debate on this, but it didn't last that long. And everybody realized that China's cooperation was critical, which they were not able to secure at the time. Moon Jae-in, as you know, in his at the beginning of his term, um, the whole events were coming from Washington at the time. So because of President Trump's unconventional approach to North Korea. So we had kind of a so-called war crisis in April 2017 and bloody nose strike against North Korea in late 2017. So everybody in Washington and Seoul were concerned about potential military conflicts on the Korean Peninsula. But as we know, Trump and Moon Jae-in tried to turn the table and change the whole landscape on the Korean Peninsula, and they succeeded. And Trump's top-down approach to North Korea ended up with summit meetings with Kim Jong-un in Singapore and Hanoi. So at the time, the big discussion was about pros and cons of unprecedented deal-making efforts by the US president himself. But as we move forward, the whole discussion went back to the traditional step-by-step action for action concept, and a lot of people was asking why are we asking the same questions that we asked back in 2005, after we had the September 19 agreement. So that's kind of a frustrating aspect of this whole dramatic developments. And also, discussions or criticisms about the ethics of romance between Trump and Kim Jong-un, and people discussed and realized the constraints of domestic politics when you're pursuing North Korea policy, even in the U.S. So impeachment of Trump was one of the biggest constraints of Trump's approach to North Korea at the time. And bureaucratic politics, even though the president can lead the negotiations with North Korea, you need to have some bureaucratic supports, logistically and politically. But at the time, it didn't work out in an ideal way. And as we approach the end of Moon Jae-in's term, the end of war declaration emerged as another big topic. It was Moon's final pitch for resuming talks with North Korea. Um, and Biden's pledge to restore alliance that was undermined during the Trump administration, and Biden's efforts to prevent North Korea's provocations. That really that helped Moon's final pitch for resuming talks with North Korea. But the question was, will North Korea respond? And as we know, North Korea just self-quarantined themselves during the COVID-19. And even if North Korea, respond, what would be the next steps? Re-entering the arduous march, if you will, to nuclear negotiations with North Korea. That's something that the Washington didn't really, was not really excited about. So from the White House point of view, uh, nuclear negotiations with North Korea is kind of high risk, low return project. So you don't see any big motivation to pursue this project, right? If high risk, high return, then you can consider, but high risk, low return, why would you? And President Biden, he publicly said he has no illusion with North Korea when he had joint press conference with Moon Jae-in. So that shows the basic approach to the North by the Biden administration. President Yoon Suk-yeol, he presented an audacious initiative, and Biden, after his North Korea policy review, presented calibrated and practical approach to North Korea. But most people interpreted the combination of this audacious initiative and Biden's approach as a strategic patience 2.0, which we observed during the Obama and Lee Myung-bak administration. And as I discussed earlier, we have deep-rooted North Korea fatigue and skepticism on nuclear negotiations with North Korea. And also North Korea's extreme hostility towards the US and South Korea after Hanoi summit. And they're also even talking about preemptive nuclear attack on South Korea, and they're safe isolating themselves. So this whole situation, not that cooperative, approach by North Korea, that's just made the U.S. and South Korea strengthen the deterrence and extended deterrence, especially, and because of this, the South Korea, again, mostly the conservative part of the people there, they have a renewed debate on South Korea's nuclear armament, and as you know, recently President Yoon Suk-yeol and Biden, they agreed to upgrade their consultation on extended deterrence, which include nuclear weapons. Let me briefly discuss North Korean economy and North Korean human rights. North Korean economy is an important topic, obviously, but we have few experts in Washington. And when it comes to North Korean economy, Washington's main interest is in economic sanctions, and that's why I think the Treasury or Commerce departments and the people's in charge of sanctions at the State Department are interested in the North Korean economy. And North Korea's social economic changes are dramatic, as you know, that happened over the last, I think, a decade at least. But it's really hard to research. Uh, Hard data is not available. Mostly, even the South Korean experts, they depend on interviews with defectors, but interviews is could be a part of the research tool, but it's not complete, and that's why people try to introduce satellite imagery analysis so that they can have a kind of objective and most updated information about their research topic. North Korean human rights at the beginning, like I think during the Nomuyon and Bush administrations, we had a lot of activism going on at the time, but it was mostly activism rather than research. So they were not that invited to the panel discussion on North Korea at the time. But 2014, we had a UN COI report on the North Korean human rights. It was the most authoritative assessment of human rights in North Korea. And we had Sony Pictures hack and in 2014 and Otto Warmbier's death in 2017. So North Korean human rights became a really important topic for both research purpose and politically in Washington. Basically, North Korea became an evil state when you consider the human rights situation there. Research on this topic heavily depends on interviews with defectors. But again, it's not complete, and we even have Shin Dong-hyuk coming out saying that what he testified was not true, even though there was a book published based on his testimony, and even UN COI report quoted his testimony, but he himself just said that what he said was not true. So that was really shocking to the people in the human rights world. And I think because of that, partly, even human rights people are adopting satellite imagery analysis of prison camp so that they can have objective information about the topic. Let me stop here, and I'll be happy to discuss further if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.